Bucknutters, welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, April 15th, 2016. I am Dave Biddle, joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. Bax, some interesting news in the world of recruiting for Ohio State. I know a lot of Buckeye fans have mixed emotions about this. I want to delve into Todd Sibley being asked to gray shirt, and this is a young man running back out of Akron-Hoban that I just noticed this. He committed to Ohio State almost exactly a year ago. It was April 19th, 2015 when he committed. Now, almost a year later, a little less than a year later, he's asked to take a gray shirt by Ohio State's coaching staff, and basically, I think there's no way he's going to end up at Ohio State now. Our Alex Gleitman broke this story yesterday, and Todd's saying he's still committed to Ohio State, but I just don't see any scenario where he takes a shirt. We're talking about a young man, Bax, that's ranked as the number 17 running back in the country, number 211 overall player in the country, so not like a top 100 kid, but still very highly ranked, four-star prospect. He tells Alex he's going to now look at Michigan State, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pitt, Stanford, and Virginia. Where do you come down on this? I know a lot of Buckeye fans are debating this. They like the fact that Urban Meyer is just a stalwart on the recruiting trail. He recruits nationally. He's bringing in top-rated kids, but they don't like the fact that maybe an Ohio kid sounds like he's getting processed, to use that word. Where do you come down on that, Bax?
I come down on the sucks that he's getting processed side, and he's good enough that if he ends up at Sparty or in Ann Arbor, he could be good enough to bite us in the ass in a few years. A, you can never question Urban in recruiting just because of his results. But B, one of the reasons Ohio State has been so dominant the last 15 years in the rivalry, and just in general, has been an utter dominance in the state of Ohio. It's very difficult to me. And I know they've got guys like J.K. Dobbins, and they're in on all these top players. There's not a lot of room in the class. But it's really difficult to me to turn away a top Ohio kid. He's a top 10 kid in state. Top 10 Ohio kids generally never deal with situations like this. And it's going to suck when he's at another Big Ten school and is performing well against Ohio State. This is your classic setup, for the Mike Boren scenario where, Ohio State decided they didn't want me and I went to Michigan and I've made them pay. I don't want to see this. The only good news is that school up north has they have 3 tailbacks in their class next year already, so maybe he'll end up at Sparty instead, but Sparty's the school that's actually been beating us on the field. So really the only good thing about this ethically is that I can't get too mad about anything shady going on, at least, because unlike, say, Alabama, who offers gray shirts after or sign or like the week before signing day, this does give Sibley plenty of time to still look at all these other schools. But you're absolutely right. He is not going to be part of this class. Why would a top 200 kid gray shirt if he didn't have to? I mean, this isn't. If he ends up at Ohio State, it's one of the best recruiting jobs I've ever seen. Because if I'm Todd Sibley, I'm thinking, man, I could play as a true freshman in all these other places, and he wouldn't be wrong. So it's a situation where I really am interested to see what this does to the Ohio recruiting dynamic, because you can't pull an offer from an Ohio kid, but this is essentially doing as much in a nicer way.
Do you think the same scenario is coming down the pike for Danny Clark? I mean, it'd be his teammate at Akron-Hoban. They might never be able to step foot in that school again if they do the same thing with Danny Clark. Again, I don't think they would pull the offer, but they come to Danny Clark. Let's say they land another quarterback in the 2017 class. We know they're going after other quarterbacks, which is a huge sign to me. Why would you go after 2 quarterbacks if you're set on Danny Clark on the heels of getting Dwayne Haskins, on the heels of getting Joe Burrow? Do you really need 2 quarterbacks in the 2017 class? Not if you're sold on the guy you already have. So I could see a scenario, Bax, where they do the same thing with Danny Clark, where they tell him, hey, we still want you, quote-unquote, but we want you to take a gray shirt. Do you think the same thing's going to come down the pike with Danny Clark?
I was having this exact conversation last night with a couple people, and I actually put it in the bucket whenever Martell visited a few weeks ago, that what's the effect going to be on Danny Clark here? Because Danny Clark's in a very similar position. He's a top 10 Ohio kid. He's a top 250 national kid. But he's not necessarily the best kid at his position, and the best kids nationally in his position are very interested in Ohio State. He's a very good player, but is he a fit for OSU's system perfectly? Not exactly. And Danny Clark, whenever the Buckeyes signed him as a freshman, it was such a big deal at the time. He hadn't played a single game yet and everything, and he had already been offered. And the truth of the matter is that I think a lot of people expected him to develop into like a top 10 type of prospect nationally. And, he's a top 250 kid nationally. He's a very good prospect, but he's not that can't miss, no way you can pass on him type of player now. And, the connection with the two at the same school, I mean, that was the natural conclusion that he came to. And Clark's going to be even harder, though, than Sibley because, Clark has essentially been the centerpiece for recruiting a lot of the kids currently in this class. He's been on campus for 3+ years as a recruit where he's been committed. So I certainly think Danny Clark, if he is in a position where he gets offered the gray shirt, he's much more likely to say, take it. But I very much am concerned that the same thing's going to happen, and this is going to really open the door for others to come into Ohio on the argument, well, Ohio State's not really respecting the top Ohio kids anymore. Look what they did to Clark and Sibley. That's a real big concern for Urban. And you know that with the numbers in 2017 is the reason they're doing this, because of the roster crunch, because of how well they've recruited the last couple of years. But, man, you've got to be really careful because the relationship with the state of Ohio in recruiting is the number one reason why Ohio State wins football games and has won football games the last 15 years. So this is going to be a little nerve-wracking to watch play out, to say the least, because if there's hard feelings, then there could be bad press about Ohio State from an in-state school, and that's something you haven't heard in a very, very long time. The Sibley thing's already cracking the door a little bit open. If it comes in with Danny Clark getting offered a gray shirt, that door might get kicked wide of discontent from coaches.
All right, spring game tomorrow at the Horseshoe, 1:30 p.m. Eastern, will be televised by Big Ten Network. But Urban Meyer wants 100,000 fans at this game, and I'll kick it to you first. Is he going to get his wish? Is he going to get 100,000 at this game tomorrow?
Yeah, he's going to get his wish on two fronts. One, there's going to be 100,000 plus for certain. It's supposed to be a perfect cloudless day, 70 degrees, and the weather is the biggest determining factor in a lot of these spring games, how the crowd shows up. I fully expect there to be 100,000 plus at this game, no question about it. And the other good news is that it's broadcast on Big Ten Network, and unlike the spring game for the School of North, it will not get preempted for gymnastics.
I love it. And if for some reason, if you miss the game tomorrow live, you can't come to the stadium, you can't watch it on TV live, Big Ten Network's going to show 8 replays of this game, including a couple tomorrow night and then through the week. So they've come a long way. A couple years ago, they didn't even show the game live because Michigan and Ohio State were playing at the same time. They didn't want to ruffle any feathers. I'm like, listen, you didn't know who your bell cow is. You didn't know who really makes that meter move for you. I think now they realize Ohio State does that, tenfold more than anybody else. And let's look at some of the players. Urban Meyer was asked yesterday, I love this about him, sometimes you can ask a head football coach, name some players you're really looking forward to seeing, at the spring game or, in a particular game or whatever it might be, a real game, and they'll give you some canned answer like, it's important for everybody, and I'm not going to single anybody out. Well, not Urban Meyer. He singled a lot of people out that he's looking forward to seeing. I'm going to get your reaction to this back. So we'll go position by position. And Coach Meyer was just going off the top of his head. He admitted he's probably leaving some guys out, but he started with the defensive backs. And he said some guys he's looking forward to seeing are Damon Arnett, Damon Webb, Denzel Ward, and Malik Hooker. Your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction is I want to see those guys too. He's talking about the two guys who are supposed to be the starting safeties. I've been saying for months now that my biggest concern with this team is the safety position. I want to see that Webb has picked up the position. I want to see that Malik Hooker is worth all this hype that we've been hearing. Urban keeps talking about him like he's a guaranteed starter when he hasn't even played it down yet as a safety. And he hasn't really been much of an impact guy because he didn't play safety in high school either, so he's learning the position. But, yeah, I want to see the starting safeties, too. I also want to see Damon Arnett because we've been hearing a lot about him getting some playing time among the corners. One of those guys who's sort of the diamond in the rough coming from a major program at St. Thomas Aquinas. I'm excited to see those guys, too. But Urban's absolutely right. And not just that he's absolutely right on everything, but I think I'll be watching the safeties on defense with more interest than any other position during the spring game.
Then he shifted to linebacker, and obviously he's just talking about guys that are filling, new starting spots. He didn't talk about Raekwon McMillan, who's solidified and then some as the starting middle linebacker. I mean, the kid was a Bucknuts finalist as a sophomore last year. Can't wait to see him as a junior. But Coach Meyer talking about the linebackers, he says, I think Dante Booker has kind of solidified himself. No surprise there. We know Dante Booker is going to fill in for Josh Perry, and Booker's teammates have really talked him up throughout spring. They say he's they feel like he can be as good as Josh, and that's no knock on Josh Perry. They just feel like Booker's more athletic, and he can play to that level that Josh Perry played at. And Perry's going to be a second-round pick, so that's very good news if Booker can play to that level. And then Coach Meyer said, and so has Chris Worley. And that's an interesting one for me because, I keep hearing Jerome Baker's really looking good, but the coaches are adamant that Chris Worley, he's going to be that guy that's going to fill in for Darren Lee. I still think there could be a battle in camp. We'll see, but Coach Meyer saying Dante Booker has kind of solidified himself, and so has Chris Worley. Your reaction, Bax?
Well, I'm not surprised with Worley. Let's be real here. Worley's a guy that we've heard for a couple years now has been a very good player who's stuck behind an elite, exceptional first-round pick kind of player in Darren Lee. And so I think we all look at Jerome Baker's athleticism and are really wowed by it. And we're thinking, oh man, that guy, if this was a video game, he'd be the one with the 91 score and Worley'd be the 89 and, Baker'd be the one playing. But it's not like that in real life. Worley's got all this experience. He's a very good athlete on his own. He's holding down the Glenville connection at Ohio State. It feels like it's been a while since we've had a Glenville starter. And, he's a guy who's been there. He's a known quantity. He's a guy who maybe in the fall Baker continues to develop, will push him for playing time. And I'm sure there'll be some rotation this year at linebacker with all the incredible talent that's here. But I'm not shocked that Worley is considered a little bit solidified here just because we've known he would step in and at worst be very, very good. And if you're talking about this defense where there's going to be a lot of new parts, maybe some certainty at one of the linebacker spots isn't the worst thing I've ever heard. I mean, Worley's not chopped meat here. It's not like he's some two-star kid who's sort of, the feel-good Mark Titus on the story. He's a good player. So if Worley solidified himself, then that means he's going to be a known quantity at linebacker for the Buckeyes in defense this year, and that's a good thing.
I agree that Worley's a good player. I just keep hearing from people that are excellent sources. They're saying Jerome Baker has superstar potential, and he's not just he's going to be a sophomore now. This is when guys break out. Darren Lee is a redshirt freshman. He broke out. Joey Bosa is a sophomore. Seems like that second year, that's when guys can really break out. So that's why I think it's not even knock against Chris Worley when I say I think Jerome Baker's going to still give him a run. I just keep hearing Jerome Baker has superstar potential, and maybe as a true freshman, you're not going to get out there if you have superstar potential. By your second year, that's usually when it clicks. So good problem to have, but it is good to hear that Chris Worley's playing so well. Let's examine the defensive line. Coach Meyer says, this is good news. He says, saying about two guys. He said Jalen Holmes has to continue to impress because he has. So he wants him to continue to impress, but he did say he's been impressive throughout the spring. And then Coach Meyer says the other guy that has really come on is Draymond Jones. So Jalen Holmes and Draymond Jones getting singled out by the head man. Your reaction to that, Bax?
I'm excited about Draymond Jones more than anything else because it gives us some depth at defensive tackle if he can really step in and play. I think most people expect Mike Hill and Tracy Sprinkle to be the starters, but if you get Draymond Jones having a significant role, it means he's recovered from that knee injury he had at the end of high school. It means he's able to step in and sort of be a big contributor. And, we've heard about a bunch of defensive linemen this year sort of showing their wares in spring football this year. But what we haven't really heard much about it is Draymond Jones and how he's recovering. And the fact that Urban's been impressed with him is a really great thing, I think, for the Buckeyes here for this fall because, Draymond Jones is one of those young guys who redshirted last year, is able to start stepping in a bigger role, allows you to rotate more. And if you need to have a rotation at defensive tackle, a couple of years back where the Buckeyes had Adolphus Washington and Michael Bennett side by side, playing virtually every snap is a rarity. Getting depth at that position is fantastic. So the Draymond Jones news has me pretty excited. And, if Urban's singling him out, it means he's doing something right.
All right, let's switch to the offense. A few more position groups, and I'll let you go here. Offensive line, Coach Meyer singled out Jamarco Jones, said he has kind of settled in at left tackle. They seem very happy with Jamarco Jones. I thought coming in they were higher on Prince than Jamarco Jones. It sounds like they're actually higher on Jamarco Jones than they are Isaiah Prince. So again, Urban Meyer says Jamarco Jones is kind of settled in at left tackle. Then he says right tackle, I need to see a good day out of Isaiah Prince. So sounds like Isaiah Prince is going to be the starter there unless Malcolm Pridgeon comes in late and beats him out. I know Brandon Bowen's also working there. I'm just absolute mammoth redshirt freshman. But it sounds like they're not quite ready to anoint Prince, but they need to see a little bit more out of him. And Coach Meyer says then Matt Burrell, Michael Jordan, and Demetrius Knox are competing for that inside spot, meaning left guard. He left out Evan Lyle, and maybe that was just an oversight. I don't think it was. I think those guys have passed Evan Lyle. Your reaction to him talking about Jamarco Jones, Isaiah Prince, Matt Burrell, Michael Jordan, and Demetrius Knox?
Well, I agree with you completely. I think Evan Lyle's fallen out of the discussion. He's fallen into the career backup category at this point with the younger guys passing him. But the real story of that whole list is that the first choice for left tackle is Jamarco Jones. Going into the spring, I was the same page as you. I thought Prince was going to A, be the left tackle, and B was the guy who they were sure was going to play right away from all the talk that we heard coming in. And I sort of expected coming into the year that you would have one left tackle who was set, and then the right tackle, whichever one of the guys it was going to have to fend off Malcolm Pridgeon when he arrived. Well, looks like that's going to be Isaiah Prince who's the one who's going to be in that battle for when Pridgeon gets it. Let's face it, Pridgeon was a 5-star level kind of junior college recruit. Those guys don't come to schools to just sit or compete to be backups. He's coming to OSU to start. So you're looking at a point right now where it's going to be Isaiah Prince versus Pridgeon to play right tackle. And that's going to be a very interesting battle in camp. I mean, that's going to be the carryover day, particularly if Prince struggles here. It opens the door a little bit for a guy like Bowen, but it's going to be who is getting challenged by Pridgeon more than anything else is the storyline coming out of the fact that Jamarco Jones has apparently moved ahead of Prince in the pecking order at tackle.
At running back, Coach Meyer says, we'll carry that over into training camp between Briante and Mike Weber, obviously meaning Briante Dunn. He just said Briante. We'll carry that over into training camp between Briante and Mike Weber. Translate that for me, Bax.
Translation is we don't have the bell cow back for the first time in the Meyer era. And that's what happens when you go from Carlos Hyde to Ezekiel Elliott. What this means is they're going to share carries for a while until somebody breaks out. And on top of that, Antonio Williams has been so impressive. I think Urban wants to leave the door open to allowing the freshman to step up and become the guy. I think Dunn has performed really well. I think Weber has sort of gotten himself in a position where he's competed and earned playing time. But Urban knows he doesn't have a clear-cut start of this group, so he wants the competition to continue all summer. I think this is more of a psychological ploy by Urban to say, hey, all you guys have a chance to play, so you really better put in your work this summer. To me, that's the one position where, this is definitely not going to be decided in camp even. I think it's going to be decided after the first month of the season. We see how these guys do in live football.
I agree with you. I think we're going to see running back by committee, and I think Curtis Samuel might be in the mix before it's all said and done. He'll probably be the starting H, but he could also play running back. He was the backup running back the last 2 years to Ezekiel Elliott, including as a true freshman on the national championship team. One more thing I'll say about the running backs, though, just focusing on his comment about Briante Dunn and Mike Weber. If a fifth-year senior and a redshirt freshman are equal in the eyes of the coaches in spring, I have to think the younger guy is going to pass the older guy when the chips are down. I think Mike Weber will end up getting more carries than Briante Dunn. We'll see if Mike Weber is the starter, ends up being the bell cow, but I do think, just look at those two guys, I think Mike Weber will eventually surpass Briante Dunn. All right, last position group. Coach Meyer talked about the wide receivers. He says at receiver, we've had 3 guys that have had excellent camps, and that's James Clark, Paris Campbell, and Terry McLaurin. Those guys will all be involved in the fall, but they have to have good days today at practice, meaning Thursday, and Saturday, too, at the spring game. So a lot of people are like, wait a minute, why didn't he talk about Austin Mack or Torrance Gibson? He's talked up Austin Mack throughout the spring. Don't worry about Austin Mack. They love Austin Mack. This was Coach Meyer singling out 3 older guys who have really turned the corner, and I don't think he was focusing on those super young guys like Torrance Gibson and Austin Mack. He wanted to talk about some veteran guys, kind of throwing a bone here to James Clark, Paris Campbell. Now, he's always been high on Paris Campbell, but especially throwing a bone to James Clark and Terry McLaurin. So your reaction on Coach Meyer singling out Clark, Campbell, and McLaurin back?
Well, I think Clark is sort of saying, hey, this is a confirmation of what we heard all spring. It's like James Clark is finally healthy, and maybe we're starting to really see the real James Clark that we haven't seen since he broke his leg. As for Paris Campbell, after all the hype last year around him and the virtually zero that Ohio State got out of him for the season, I'm just going to have to wait and see him until the fall, especially with the fact that I think wide receiver is the position more than any other that we're going to have to allow camp to come around because of all the guys who are hurt, who aren't participating right now. And, Corey Smith, Noah Brown, and you have Curtis Samuel not really playing. Dante Wilson's been out a lot. All those guys are going to be major contributors this year in terms of getting on the field. So it's good that he singled these guys out. I'm really excited about Terry McLaurin because of his top-end speed, and he was a special teams, superstar last year for Ohio State. And we all know how much Urban loves special teams guys that excel. So, McLaurin being on that list doesn't really surprise me, but, this is another position where we're just going to have to wait to see until the fall because half the group that's competing to be on the field isn't even there. To me, the only thing I could really feel comfortable telling you about receiver this fall is I think Austin Mack's going to play a lot. That's about it.
Great wisdom, as always, out of Matt Baxendell, the People's Champ. You can catch his column every Sunday, The Bucket of Bullets. Thank you very much, Bax. Thanks to the listeners out there for tuning into the show. I hope everyone has a great day. Enjoy the spring game tomorrow. It's going to be a lot of fun. Buckeyes are going to break their own record. 99,000 and change at last year's spring game is the record. And I think tomorrow, I agree with Bax, they are going to break the record. They're going to have over 100,000, and what a spectacle that'll be. Like they need any help on the recruiting front, but that'll help even more. Thanks again to Bax. Thanks to the listeners. We'll talk to you guys on Monday. Let's hear some Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.